Hi, I'm Adam from Months and PCs, and today we are going to be pulling apart a laptop that hasn't been touched in about 4 years. We're going to be looking to pull it apart, give it a good clean out, and teach you guys a little bit about the parts that we've got in there. Now, fortunately, I've got a gaming laptop, so it's only got one cover at the bottom with one screw to take off, and that just clips out so we can easily access the basics of the computer to upgrade your RAM, storage, those sorts of things. So we are going to go through a few of the parts as we go along, but firstly, we've got to remove the battery, or at least the cable. So we're going to take out this little cable here, and we've got a tool that just helps us prise that out. We've got to also be careful not to damage any of the cables. Again, there is still power in the battery no matter how much it has been decharged. So we do have to be careful there. So that's all released. The rest of the computer shouldn't have any power going to it. Again, before you do any work in a computer, whether that is a desktop or a laptop, it's crucial to make sure that there's no power, whether that's unclipping the battery or turning it off at the wall. So we've got RAM here. Now this is DDR3L. The DDR is the type of memory it is, and the L stands for laptop. So we're just going to unclip and take this one out. So you can see here there's a little notch. Now that helps show which way around the RAM should be put in. It's also an identifier of the type of RAM that it is. They're a bit smaller than your standard desktop because they're designed to fit into smaller spaces like the laptop. This is a 1600 megahertz of RAM, and we've got 2 sticks of 8 gigabytes in here. So we'll just put one to the side, and we're going to use the 2 little clips to pull apart and grab the second one out. And that's the RAM. So next we're going to be looking at storage. We're going to take out our M.2 SSD, and that's done by one little screw and then just gently lifting and pulling out. This little drive is a 275 gigabyte M.2 SSD. Now M.2s are faster, they're great for operating systems. My operating system is running on this, and compared to SSDs, standard SSDs these days, prices are quite similar. And most modern gaming laptops or computers will have slots to upgrade for additional M.2. Next, we're going to remove our hard drive. So we need to unplug that initially from the motherboard, and then we've got 5 screws that we need to take just to actually release the whole hard drive and get that out. Now we've got an SSHD drive in here. So that's part solid state drive and part hard disk drive. So there is a mechanical disk in there for your slower but bigger storage solution. It's also paired with an SSD drive built in, which is all digital to access some of that data a little bit quicker. So it's quicker than your standard disk drive, but it's not quite to the standard of a full SSD. These are less popular at the moment, just as SSD prices have dropped quite a bit. It's 1 terabyte we've got in there, and as you can see, it's a 2.5 inch drive, so it's thinner than your standard 3.5 inch drive you'd have in a desktop. So next we're going to remove the battery. Now I'm just going to stop the video there just for a very quick moment. You do have to be very, very careful when doing anything with the battery. As I said before, no matter how much you try and discharge the battery, there will always be a bit of power in there. You've got to be careful not to pierce it, don't tamper with it. This is quite serious. You've got to be really, really careful with it. So we'll throw you back into it and you can watch me remove the battery. As fun as that is. So again, if you're not sure what you're doing, just get an authorized technician to do this. Don't recommend taking it out if you're unsure. And also, if you are going to be disposing of them, just make sure they're done correctly. Don't just throw them in your garden waste, because the binman will have a little bit of a fright when they throw that into the truck and it explodes on them. So it was kind of at this point I decided I wasn't just going to clean that initial area that you can access, and I was going to do a full deep clean, pull it all apart and go right back to the bare bones. So I decided to draw a quick plan just so that I knew where all the screws were going. There's quite a few more screws to take out of the case, and I didn't want to lose which were going where. This is a great idea. You can sometimes get mats that have already got the outlay, but just drawing it on a piece of paper, it's a good way of keeping track. So we've got little cables here that we're going to need to detach from the motherboard. Again, we're just going to use our little tool to prise those up, being very careful not to damage any of the cables. And that's one unclipped there. Next, we've got our Wi-Fi card to take out, which is just this little card here. It's very similar to the M.2, as in there's just one small screw that holds it in. You then lift it up and gently pull it out. There are also two small little cables, one black, one white, I'm not sure how well you can see that are attached to the Wi-Fi card. Now they just gently need pulling to unclip from there. So that's the black one and that's the white one. So if we look a little bit closer, you see it's a very similar slot to the M.2, and you've also got your two little points up the top where the black and white cables were plugged into. So next, need to flip the laptop over. So we've got to just make sure those cables are out of the way. They're not going to catch on anything. We don't want to be damaging any of those. And then we're going to open it up. Now I have got an issue with this computer. There is a bit of plastic that has broken. So when opening it, it's a little bit trickier. And I am going to fix that as we get through the video. So just time to unclip the keyboard. We're using our little tool to reach under it, undo all the clips and lift that up very gently. And you can see underneath we've got two cables. So they're just plugged in with a little clip that you lift up and then you can pull the ribbon out. The smaller ribbon is actually for the keyboard and the larger ribbon is for the backlight, because the backlight needs a little bit more power than the keyboard itself. So now that's out, I'm just going to put that to a side. So there's a couple more screws here that we need to take out, attaching the motherboard, and that will allow us to hopefully remove the main faceplate. But first, we've got another couple of ribbon cables to remove. One is for the power button, and then we've also got the mouse pad that we need to remove. So we are going to flip it over, and there's a couple more screws that we need to take out to allow us to get the motherboard out. Now I have got a broken screw. This is where the plastic's broken and the screw's there. This footage was about 5 minutes of me trying to get it out. I don't think you guys need to see that, so we have skipped this along as quickly as possible so that we can just get onto the actual meaty getting the computer apart. So once all the screws are removed, you go around with your little tool and prise off the armrest. Okay, so flipping it over once again, just being careful of the cables underneath, and that whole top section should just gently unclip and pull out. Just being careful not to damage anything underneath. And there we go. So next we're going to be focusing on the fans. So we've got two fans in here, and they keep the computer cool by sitting on top of the heatsink fins. They suck air from underneath, blow the heat out the back through the fins, keeping the heatsink cool. So there's little cables attaching these to the motherboard. We need to prise those out just using our little tool again. These ones are a little bit trickier. There's a slightly smaller cable, and they did feel a little bit more delicate. So you've just got to be careful when prising those out. Once that's done, you can just gently lift it up, and there you've got one of the fans. You can see it's a little bit dusty. We will get to cleaning that shortly. So next, we've got our other cable. Again, use the tool, just gently prise that out. And again, it's quite dusty in there. I did notice at this point that I was going to continue, but there was a nice chunk of dust I thought you guys would absolutely love to see. Ugh. Clean freaks, eat your heart out. So next we've got our I/O PCB and ports that we're going to need to remove. Now they're separate from the motherboard. There's a few connectors here. You've got USB connectors, speakers connectors. We've just got to prise those apart using our little tool. Down the bottom, that's connected to the subwoofer, so we just need to gently pull that out. And then finally, we've got our ribbon cable that we have to very, very carefully pull out of the motherboard after unclipping. There we go. So our I/O shield is now no longer connected to anything, and we can just gently lift that up and remove it from the case. So you can see there you've got your two USB ports and you've got your headphone jack or microphone. So we've got our cell battery that we just need to remove. That's just a small cable at the bottom. Again, they're all a little bit tricky, so prizing them out very gently and moving that to get that out. Just like so. There we go. A couple more cables. You've got speaker cables at the top. Again, really small cables once you get to this point, so if you're not sure what you're doing, just get someone professional to do this. Don't try and damage, because you could damage the whole computer just by catching the wrong thing and need a whole new motherboard, in which case something that's about 4 years old, it's probably cheaper just to get a new one. The little ribbon cable there that I've removed is down to the light at the front, so once that's removed we can take the motherboard out. And that comes with the Heatsink, leaving us just with a screen and a bare case. So we need to go and lay this down on something. So I've gone and got my old motherboard box and anti-static bag, so we can put this on without too much risk of any damage to the motherboard. What we're going to do is then we're going to fully remove the heatsink. We're going to have a look at the thermal paste, get that reapplied, get it all cleaned up. And hopefully it's going to bring some temperatures down when we're actually using the laptop. And what I'm going to be doing is actually unscrewing them in a diagonal motion. And what that does, it just gently eases the screws out without there being too much tension on one part of the motherboard. We don't want any sort of tension cracks or damage that can happen here. So we're just going to gently undo these. There we go. So there was quite a lot of thermal paste on here. Generally manufacturers, unless you're going for a top of the range, would use quite a basic thermal paste, which doesn't have as best heat conductivity. So we will be looking to clean that up and get that all sorted out. So the copper plates that you see on the heatsink there in my hand, they touch both of the dies, the CPU and the GPU die, and they'll help transfer the heat away via the copper piping to where the fins are, and that's the silver and red parts near my fingers. The fans then blow the warm air through the fins and take that out of the computer. So we are going to leave it there. I know you guys are probably waiting to see the cleaning, but you are going to have to wait just a little bit longer. Make sure you're subscribed, and then next time you can see, as soon as the video comes up, you can watch the clean and the put back together. If you have learned something, do give us a thumbs up if it has been helpful. If you've got any questions, just put them down in the comments below. I will come back to you as soon as we can. And guys, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.